Welcome. This is Trainer Talk, and I'm so excited to have all of you here and to be joining with me today. I have Lieven. Say your last name, Lieven.
Migerode.
I tried to practice, but I did not get it down well. And Jeff.
Who has no last name at all.
No last name, Jeff, your last name. I think it's Slootmaeckers. Close, but not quite it. So Lieven and Jeff are joining. I'm so glad to have you joining today. Lieven is the certified EFT trainer in Belgium, and Jeff is a supervisor there. And they've been doing some fabulous work. And yes, please do say where you're from, where you're joining us from. It's great to have so many of you here, and we will all be monitoring the chat box, and we'll asking some of the questions. Many of you wrote some questions in for us to respond to, and we're really happy to be addressing this because so many times we have couples with violence, history of violence, or violence in the relationship. Sometimes we know about it, sometimes we don't, and we want to address when the contraindication, when not, that sort of thing. And at the end, if you like what you're hearing and you want to know more, we are teaming up to provide a 2-day workshop, and we'll tell you more about that at the end of the time. So Lieven and Jeff, it's just so great to have you here with us. And I know there's kind of some questions and some points that we want to make, and one of them really has to do with, can we? What you know, before we even worry about how, many couple therapists come in like, oh, I hear anything about violence, it's all I know is it's a contraindication. When I got my training, it was a contraindication. So perhaps we can address that first off.
Let's start for that. And we have a technical problem because we see Jeff, but he doesn't see nor hear us. So
oh, that's why he is quiet. Okay, let's see.
Can you help him out, you think?
I think I might be able to help him out. I know, Jeff, you may need to just come back in, go out and come back in the room.
Okay. We do that with telephone.
Yeah.
So in meanwhile, while I will show that I can do 2 things at a time, but both badly, I will type a bad letter to Jeff and answer your question. So yes, that's amazing. It's been all in the history of before EFT and couple and family therapy. There's been a very long discussion that starts in the 90s if we should be allowed to work with couples and in couple therapy. And there was this discussion that it could be unethical, because if you think in the power distribution and you think in gender as an explanation, then it was said that people come in the room, say vulnerable things, and then because of the vulnerable things, get again battered outside of the room. So it was this, but luckily we followed the dream of Sandra Stitt. I hope a lot of you know her. Sandra did from, I think, Kansas University. They did a great job in breaking this idea and proving that couple therapy works in cases of violence.
We kind of had to shift some thinking there, Lieven, right? Because all we had was this cycle of violence that really made the perpetrator and the victim, and that if there was any violence, that's what you were looking at. And yes, it was way on this end of the continuum that made it impossible, and like you said, unethical to work with. So lots of us just have had like visceral experience to move away from couples where there's been that violence. And Sandra Stitt then came in with redefining, calling it interpersonal partner violence, yes, and risking trying some new things with bringing couples back into the room.
And for us, we came into this, me from or also 25 years ago already, couples coming to me and say, no, we have violence sometimes in our couple, but nobody wants to see us, and we want to save our marriage and our life, and we're not allowed, and nobody wants to help us. Can you help us, please? So I thought there must be another way to look at it. And to be in short, there's two things important. There's the work of Michael Johnson that taught us and taught everybody that, it's been true that it could be dangerous to work with couples when one part of violence called intimate terrorism, and that violence is based on controlling the other person. But there is a big but. That kind of couple violence is a minority. And the majority of couple violence, as we all can feel in our bodies, dear colleagues, in our relationships, that the majority of anger and violence is connected to love and connection and losing connection. And it's an interaction where there's a cycle that escalates into violence. So that already, in the starting point, we thought like this, but then we went into the literature and how to find an explanation for violence. And then we only find this victim-perpetrator thinking, which makes it difficult to start a therapeutic relationship. Because a therapeutic relationship is a collaborative relationship where the clients come to us with their suffering, and they ask us to help them alleviate their suffering. But if we think in perpetrators and victims, then we cannot alleviate their pain because we cannot join them. So our choice is to work as psychotherapists. So we hear the complaint and the pain and the suffering of the people, and we then hear people say, implicit or explicit, our love relationship is suffering from this violence.
Yeah.
And then we can help them.
Lieven, how did you make F2? Welcome back, actually.
Yeah, thank you. I managed to get in. Thank you.
Glad to have you with us, not just the frozen picture. So you entered with these, years of experience of couples, which has happened in my practice as well, coming and saying, but we want to stay together. Nobody will see us, and we don't know how to do it different. I didn't know in the USA, victims and perpetrators traditionally have been just separated, and the perpetrator goes to a anger management group, a required perpetrator group, and the victims often just move out or told to leave. And so getting our thinking around, I guess what I'm hearing you say, it was like couples saying to you, we want to be together. How are you going to work with us? And your heart being responsive to that.
We were touched. We both were touched in a different area before we met, and we were touched by this suffering. And how then could we be ethical? And so we had to work our head around and see things differently than the normal literature. That's why a big part of our work was to find an explanation, to understand the violence in the couple from another point of view than from power. Yeah?
Or gender.
Right.
So maybe if you allow us, we would like to show the audience a little overview of numbers. And then maybe you have probably a lot more questions, because it will help and maybe contradict some of the ideas we all have in our head.
Okay, let's play that.
Let's play that, Jeff.
Here we go.
stopped. It stopped somewhere.
It got stuck, didn't it? It stopped at the male-female percentage.
Do you think we have a bug here and an infiltration in your software?
That's right. We've got to make this point.
Yeah,
We've got to make this point. We will just
we
summarize.
will talk about it. Yeah.
Talk about it. So what seems to be that the majority, that there's not a lot of difference between male and female victims nor perpetrators. The one hitting, the one receiving the hit, the blow. Both our numbers are similar. The numbers are similar in gay and lesbian couples.
Yeah.
In some research, it seems that even they could be higher. So if the numbers are in the logic reasoning that if the numbers are the same male, female, and in gay and lesbian couples, then the explanation by gender is doubtful. Yeah. So then it means, the explanation that the only explanation for couple violence is socialization of male dominance to keep women under. That is probably not the best explanation if you see these numbers. Let's be not too blunt in what we say. Yeah. And then another thing is that, which is very important for the systemic way of thinking, that it's in a situation, and which is logical, isn't it? That tension in a couple can escalate into non-acceptable behavior like violence. We all know it escalates in non-acceptable behavior like putting down and calling names and yelling and
Verbal violence, oftentimes.
well, then we find it normal. Yes, it's in the cycle. You get excited, so the majority of couple violence is bidirectional, which is also very interesting. Around 60% of this situational couple violence is both partners physically attacking each other. Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's amazing. Yeah. So when we then declare a perpetrator and a victim, how do we choose them? There's interesting research that you tell a story to therapists and you disguise the gender, and therapists in majority then will declare the male the perpetrator.
We have such an implicit bias about that from the media. And
the media has enormous bias, while in practice, what we see at the 50-50, in practice, we see the 50-50 divide, both women throwing their husband from the stairs and husbands throwing things at women and hitting them, and women scratching and hitting, and we see everything. Yeah. So that is important. Then we said, if we still believe that what is power and where there's no real love relationship, I do it to control you, the minority of intimate terrorism that Michael Johnson saw, like some estimates say 20% of the violence is like that. It could be less in our practice. And say, don't work with that if you feel it's cold, like Sue called it once, cold violence. There's no connection. It's cold. Yeah, and then but the hot violence where there's emotions in it and interaction. That's our job. That's where we are at home. And so then we started thinking about that. And it was mostly Jeff's insight that he saw there's a cycle, and then he wrote a paper. And then I said, Jeff, that's interesting. Nobody said that. And then for 4 years, he watched videos and looked at tapes and started reading. And we came up with this model that from attachment point of view, logically in the cycle, there is what Bowlby already told and what we know from babies, that there is proximity-seeking violence. I had my grandson here today because COVID, we were low on COVID now, so I can cuddle him again. He's 2. You know, he likes to throw and hit when he's two, and when he doesn't get what he wants, he goes immediately. We know that that's human. If you want what you get and you can't explain it and you want a relationship, then it's natural. So proximity seeking violence, we understand. And then we thought both together.
Lieven, wait. I want
Wait, slow down, Jeff.
slow down, Lieven.
You
Slow.
say so many important things.
That's it, man. It's too important. I just while hearing you talk, I was thinking about a few years ago that I was also working with, okay, so there's there's really the majority of the cases we see as couple therapists. People are telling us we are suffering from our conflict and our violent incidents. So please help us. I think that's the most important thing to assess whether you can work with them or not from an EFT point of view. Because when both partners are saying, we are suffering and we hope for someone and we hope you as our therapist help us overcome these dreadful moments, I think that's a big indication to say probably this is a form of violence where we can work with. Yeah. And then we need to understand and trust the attachment model. And that's where I want to come in, because Lieven said there is something as proximity seeking violence. A few years ago there was this woman, and she was really in session, and she started yelling and calling names, and she said the most horrible things to her partner. And there was a moment where I thought, yeah, but now you're just so frustrated, you're just so overwhelmed by secondary emotions. In fact, that all the things you say, you don't mean them. Yeah, there are underlying emotions and needs, and so I was working with her, maybe not so good in EFT, but I said to her, I can't believe you mean what you say here. There must be something else. And in fact, there I really got stuck, because she said to me, I do mean it. Every word I say, I do mean it. And there was a moment I was really I just get scared, because I thought, if you mean this, what you're saying, and that's so clear that this is your intention, then maybe this is a cold form. Maybe I'm dealing with a cold form of violence where it's just not safe. And then I said, yeah, but maybe just trust the model, go into the experience of your client, and instead of arguing with her and saying, I believe you don't mean it, I said, so you mean it. All the ugly things you say right now, you just mean it.
Wow, what a big jump risk
Yeah.
to really go with that.
Yeah. And so I went with, and she said, yes, I mean it. And I said, that sounds so hard for me. And I see it's hard for him, but can you help me understand? Because I want you to understand what is happening with you. And then she said, I really mean it, because I want him to feel pain, because I am in such a deep place of pain. And you know what, Jeff? He was the first one in my life who ever saw me and was there for me having pain a few years ago at the beginning of our relationship. Yeah. She was a really traumatized woman. He was the first ever able to see me and still love me. And I've lost that feeling. And now I'm back in my dark place. So what I do is I hurt him. I hurt him like hell intentionally, because I want him to have pain. Because when I see he's suffering, I know he's back with me.
Right. I'm not alone then.
Then
I got through. Yeah.
right. And that's I think, I don't know, I never told the story, Lieven, but I think that's, if we trust the model, that's proximity seeking violence, whether it's on a verbal level or physical. We just
So proximity seeking in the sense of I want our experience to be close. Because when I hear proximity thinking, I'm thinking, oh, because we see in the avoidant attachment style, parallel play, just hang out together, don't share the inner world, kind of. That's what I'm thinking, proximity seeking. But you're really bringing it down from the coping response, right? You validated, stayed with the coping response that looks like just physically trying to get through, to that, from the coping to the underlying attachment desire for closeness.
that's it.
There's looking for connection there. Looking for connection.
I want you to feel what I feel. But that could be one way to look at it. But sometimes because now in this case I'm describing the process inside, but there's also very important the process between the partners. Because
right.
Once you look at the negative interaction cycle and you see underneath the incidents, there's always this tension that builds up because of the negative interaction cycle. So someone will start protesting on not be able to have that connection, and the other one will only hear blame, and he or she will withdraw. And then you can see that there people will use whatever it takes to prevent the other one from leaving. Yeah. And then that's also proximity seeking violence. Now I keep you here, I scratch you, I push you down on the floor so you won't leave. Yeah.
Wow. So, I just kind of feel that in my gut as you say that. The desperation, the pain of that, isolation, that aloneness that's there, that drives that, coping, that extreme coping response. That reminds me so much, Lieven, of what you were saying. Like, we see it normal in children. They don't have their words. They get frustrated. They don't have distress tolerance, developed yet. The impulsivity is high. So they just whack each other. In fact, one of my grandchildren whacked the other one not too long ago with a pole and, gave him a black eye. And we see that, happen.
Yeah.
And now we're really saying, gosh, if we look at that same isolation and the frustration, the distress of being unable to be heard or seen, that starts to really not only help us understand the inside, but that interpersonal. So as as a therapist, then I can come alongside both. I can start to equalize. So I'm not thinking perpetrator, victim,
No.
Finding a way through that.
And you say something very important, come alongside both. So the more we thought of our approach and looked at what we did, there's more even so than in regular EFT, we make the relationship our client. It must be, can I take care of your love relationship? Oh, your love relationship is suffering from this violent outburst and other things, and you're reaching for each other. And we can see you are here to ask for help. Can we try, because you want your relationship to be better and safer, can we help you? And so the people accept that very quickly, and then you're not into either one, because there's a danger when you think in perpetrator victim thing that you can make for more violence just by thinking that. Yeah.
Can you describe that?
And we do it to protect the so-called weak one. But it's the same in family therapy. I trained family therapists, and the young ladies who see little children suffering, they all side with the child against the parent, and they think they're protecting the child. No, they're hurting the child, because the child needs his parents, He doesn't need you, So, but it's a natural. Oh, you see the little child suffering. You call it a victim. You protect it from the angry parent, and then the child has no parent. This is worse. So you have to join with the family and the parental system, and and it's the same here. Join with the love relationship.
Yeah.
And so that's such a great example. I think it reminds me, and maybe many of us, of times when just out in our social environments, we might see a parent mistreating a child and feel to correct the parent or something, right? Protect the child. Didn't take me maybe once really, of trying to intervene in that way, where I saw the escalation of what was happening come down to the child, right?
Yeah.
So that really remembering that if we're not seeing both of these adults and we keep seeing the system, we're not seeing that system, that we're going to add to that isolation that they're feeling between each other, that is what they're trying to cope with, that leads to this really bad behavior.
And like you said in the beginning, from their individual therapist, from the family, from the environment, everybody tells them the solution is leave this partner.
Yeah.
Which makes for isolation. So the people stay together, but they don't dare to say it anymore to anyone, because everyone says, leave that guy, that woman. So they come to isolate. So by trying to help them, we isolate the couple, which makes the danger bigger. When you can talk to your mother and your friend and you say, oh, it happened again, it's safer. Yeah.
And that sort of explains why many couples do not reveal
No.
violence. They won't reveal it. I've been asking about violence for, as a system trained therapist as well. So as soon as I was working with couples, even before knowing EFT, I would be asking about violence. And I can remember this one couple, when I asked and they denied it, and then somewhere down in the probably 4 or 6 weeks later, the female part was a heterosexual couple, and the female partner dropped out of therapy, and the male partner was devastated. And then he came in, she left town, they split up, and he came in just for a closing session. And he said, we agreed not to tell you that she had been beating me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest, what I felt like kind of a failure in a treatment process, because they didn't feel safe to tell me what was happening.
And the safety, Rebecca, comes not. So when I see training programs and trying to be ethically correct, then they say you have to ask about, and you have to ask about, and do this questionnaire.
Right.
And so, because then for litigation you're safe, and the effect is that people don't tell you. Yeah, but an open attitude and a warm regard for the humanity of this allows people to tell you what happens. Yeah, so it's more important what is the inner attitude of the therapist than the right questionnaire, because I think most questionnaires are wrong. They make a top-down relationship instead of a collaborative relationship. I objectify you instead of talking to a person. And what are you going to do with the results? And so, but if we talk to people and we have the open tone to say, oh, you fight. And how does it go on, guys? Oh, how does it end? Oh, sometimes it gets very heavy. Wow. And you sometimes end up pushing each other. Yes, we do. So if your tone of voice and your eyes are okay, they will probably tell you more. And they still hide, like most of our clients hide a lot of things for us, of course.
So that's really, that is so, I just want to land on that for a minute, Lieven, because if we're hurrying along to, check the boxes, even find out what the negative cycle is, and we're not we're not offering, like, does it go here? You know, when it escalates, does this happen? Like normalizing it, recognizing, because we know that it happens, right? In like over 70% of couples, distressed couples, there's going to be violence.
Yes. So in every practice.
How do we get them? How do we create enough safety that they'll tell us? And so your example, you know, and the way that you're doing it is one way. I mean, that's the only way, I think, to help them be safe enough to start to share that.
And
Jeff wants to say something.
enable to create that security and that safe haven where people feel accepted being stuck in a violent relationship. I think that's priority one, creating that safe haven where people feel accepted. That is difficult for us as a therapist, because in a way, first we need to accept horrible things.
You kind of have to accept the unacceptable, right?
Yes. First, we need to accept violence and welcome people with their suffering and their violent outbursts, because we need to remember they come to us to ask us to overcome them, those moments. So, in fact, if we listen carefully to people, we hear people do not want to get stuck there. They don't want to use violence. They suffer from it. They
Right.
ask for help. So creating that safety from the beginning is essential. But it takes from the therapist a roadmap to understand violence within the negative interaction cycle.
Even the way I just said it, you know, I think could be called to question, like to accept the unacceptable. And the unacceptable on some level is the violent behavior, but it's not really. What's really unacceptable is the suffering.
That's it, yeah. And that's where they really need us, and we cannot abandon those couples because they're really in a deep need for help. So we need to be there. But what for me was really helpful in the work I did with Lieven to find that roadmap, that how to understand violence. And one part where we came up, and Lieven mentioned it before, is the proximity seeking violence. That's something Bowlby already described. So that's what we see with little children. And so a lot of cases were able to understand on a deeper level. But not all of the cases fit into that explanation. And then we came up with another form, which we can understand through within the negative interactional cycle, and that's the form that we've called the distance-seeking violence. And I think I think it's a good idea even to take a minute and try to explain that form, because that turns the idea of one perpetrator and one victim, that really turns it all the way around. Because once we know that pattern, it's really hard to speak of one perpetrator and a victim. So, Lieven, how shall we describe the distance-seeking violence?
Well, why not drown ourselves in a lake, Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll save you.
I can save you for a second. There are a couple questions on the chat that can also lead perhaps into this distance-seeking behavior. Distance-seeking.
Let's see.
So Patrice says, what has been explained really feels like things that should be worked individually. What about the risks? The perpetrating partner doesn't have the skills to avoid acting out, so the risk of dysregulation and acting out could be increased.
Yes, I think that's a really important question. But I think we need to slow down and really first go back to the
distance seeking.
How do we see
because
victim perpetrator?
Yeah, and also to see the importance of that why we need to work with them as a couple. I think couple therapy is, in my belief, in the cases where we deal with warm aggression, with situational couple violence, I think that's the best intervention we can use to help couple overcome the violence. Yeah. Because violence, it just starts within a negative interaction cycle. People will start triggering each other. And so if we can go back to the lake, right, where people get stuck and they start almost drowning. Imagine you guys being young and you went with your friends and you were little and you were able to go to a lake or a pool. There is this really nice game we all played when we were young. It's pushing the other one underneath the water. Yeah, that's the game, right? Imagine the first. Think back at the first story of the lady I talked about where she said, I really wanted to hurt my partner, the
Right.
proximity seeking violence. All right. In fact, what she's doing is, my whole life I am drowning underneath the water. Where I want you is together with me underneath the water. So I will push you into my emotions, because only then I will know that I am not alone. She does it on a in a verbal way. Okay, so seeing that through the negative interaction cycle, she will blame. She will say really painful things. If the other one is will probably get stuck in the more withdrawn position, he doesn't feel comfortable underneath the water, because he only hear how he is failing her. So he gets really overwhelmed by the feeling of, I'm not good enough for you, I'm not good enough for you. So, as we all do when we are pulled underwater, we need oxygen, we need space. So we will try, and we will say stop, we will say stop, we will say stop for hours, maybe for days. We'll say, stop hurting me, you're already hurting me, stop, you need to stop, you need to stop. But stop means, for the other partner, you don't want to be with me.
Right.
So it's really primal panic of abandonment. So she will get really overwhelmed and she will do whatever it takes to push him here underneath the water. And then there's a moment he or she will not be able to breathe anymore. So what do we do, Lieven, then? What's the only way out?
If you're underwater and you can't breathe after a certain while, we get back in, I'm going to die here. Even if it's my friend or my best friend or my brother pushing me down, he does not understand I'm suffocating here. So we go off. We create the air we need to come out of this emotional waterfall that's falling over our head. And there, in our experience, big physical accidents happen then, because it's kind of like a blackout, and all of a sudden it's only survival. I'm dying here. Puff, and we get very heavy physical reactions. And then that person, he or she, in a he or she relationship or he-she relation, that person then is the perpetrator. We don't hear the story of the 2 days of pushing under the water. Yeah, we don't hear that that person said 733 times, please stop, I cannot stand it anymore. We do not see that the other person crossed that line every time again. Yeah, you have all these stories, person shouting over the bed until 4 a.m, continuing to shout, answer, how dare you to sleep? Let me sleep, I have to go to work, we have to work for the kids tomorrow. Why can you sleep? It's not possible, you can sleep. And then at a certain moment, there's a wire burning, like, it's too much, and puff, it's like the electricity, it's the safety valve jumps, and that's that feeling under the water. And then so what we need is in the cycle, and that's why, for the question, is it dangerous, our experience is that if we welcome the couple and their love relationship, we say, oh, this, you don't want this to happen to you. Can we help you? You're welcome with your pain. This is so painful. Oh, is this the way it happens? When that happens, you feel, oh yes, you feel, and then you feel very quick. The aggression disappears.
Yes.
It becomes very slow. So our approach is, summarized, you could say, we try to reach physical safety through emotional safety. So, and not the other way around. But then we have to join love. Love is the connection. That's our, we
It's the
see,
glue.
that's where and people react to that immediately. If you say, oh, I see you suffer this because you love each other, huh? Yes, they go. Then you know, if they both go, yes, that's diagnostic, not intimate terrorism. This is hot, hot. This is hot. Yeah, fun.
This is something we can de-escalate by tracking the cycle, helping people to see that both of them are caught in a bi-directional process that has everything to do with a process between them and also inside of them. And once we just keep on the process, we stay there. But once people start feeling a little bit, and we help them see that their behavior in fact is logical, it makes sense, and they can feel it, that's the point where really the violence stops really quickly. So the quicker you get the attachment significance of the violence together with them, and that's of essence, that one partner can see this is what happening to me. So we do a lot of position enactments in stage 1. So I had this guy a few hours ago here, a very aggressive guy, and I was able to do this enactment, and he was able to say, I'm always going into a fight with you. I just, whatever, if you start yelling at me, I don't hear you. I just block you off, and I say, everything you ask me, I'll just say no, 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 because you know what? The only thing I hear is you telling me that you will abandon me. I cannot deal with it. So I'll fight you off, and I say no. I say no. And if I need to yell at you, and if I need to throw things at you, I'll do whatever it takes, as long as I don't need to hear you say that I'm not good enough, because then you will leave me just like my parents did. Okay. Doing that process with him was amazing, but so essential that she hears what his behavior means within the relationship. Yeah. And she is always like the victim, and she came to therapy like, yeah, you need to change him, but he is aggressive, and I need to do a lot of work with them to get focus on, we're doing couple therapy here, we're not doing individual therapy on your demand. But anyway, she was just blown away, like, and she said, oh, but then I need to do something about it.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think it goes really quick when we work with both of them, but it really helps as a therapist to have this clear understanding of how we can understand violence through the scope of attachment, because once we have that, we can rely on this wonderful EFT map. We can trust this process. We all know it's a great one. So
Yeah, and so that helps a lot. There was some questions in the chat box, and let's see if those questions still are there. Since maybe some of them aren't still so alive after that explanation. I think some of the concerns have to do when we can leave the attachment frame, for example, and think about the ways the culture, society, our training has taught us to think about violence. And of course, we're talking about the continuum that's on this side of intimate, terrorism, where we're looking at interpersonal partner violence, that it's happening from the relationship. So not to say there's not some, personality disorder or something on the far end, but that's part of what we're assessing for when you say, do both couples say they're suffering from this, right? Of course, from the attachment lens, we'd also talk about failed attachment more than personality disorder, and believe that if we can work with that's malleable as well, I think.
Of course.
So how do you differentiate that, the proximity seeking violence and the distance violence in that assessment?
Well, often it becomes clear rather quickly, because it has, of course, a lot to do with the both of us have seen so many violent couples, right? So at the end, it goes really quickly. Also, when people come to supervision, or when we do trainings and we work with case material, in a way, it's like, when we hear a person in the withdrawn position, they have this typical way of expressing what is going on. Like, if you ask them something like, yeah, but it's always the same, and I'm never good enough, and it's always my fault. And as an EFT therapist, when you hear people say those things, you have some idea, like probably he is the one in the help me, Lieven, getting lost.
If in the distancing position, and if there's violence, his violence will probably be distance seeking. The position of that's why the water is so interesting. We all know from training EFT that the person in the more withdrawn position, and notice, my dear friends from all the countries, I want to name the countries: the Netherlands, Romania, Italy, Ireland, Canada, Saudi Arabia, New Zealand. We all know that in the withdrawn position, feeling overwhelmed is typical. My emotional container is full, it's exploding. All these words and the tempo of it coming to me, and even the intensity of the sound of your voice, it's like cracking my head. I'm going to explode. That is the feeling of being under the water. So if we ask, and what happens to you, or some people in Jeff's place where it was a specialized service, he knew everybody was a violent couple. I have to discover it in the university hospital, so they have to tell me, or they have to ask. But Jeff knew they were sent by the judge or the police, or they came themselves. So you knew, okay, there is some violence happening here. But if you ask this question that we all ask, that I told in the beginning, you have these fights, and how do they go? And I probably all ask, how do they end? Because in trainees, I used to tell them, if the fights did not end, the people would be dead. They would not be sitting here. Yeah. So everybody, even the most violent couples, have complementary ways to slow it down. Sometimes by going away, or disappearing for days, or shutting up, or whatever. But it stops at a certain point. There's a block. It comes back. So, they stop. And then people tell about violence. Then you are more on this. And the violence is from both of you. That's interesting. From the numbers, you start asking this question. Yeah. So when somebody says, and then she's violent, and then I ask, and are you violent together? Are both of you fighting and pushing back? Because 60% is bidirectional. So if one person is pushing or hitting, then 60% chance the other one is pushing or hitting too. So, but we learn to have this stupid regular voice, as if we talk about chocolate cake. So, Oh, then, oh yes, wow, that's bad for you. And are you both then in fighting and pushing, or only one of you? So if they both say one, then it's one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Even, you know what? There's so many things you're saying and that are really brilliant. But now, as I was watching you, it's all about the way you say it. It's your tone, it's your expression. There's so many acceptation there. But what I've learned to add on that is to, instead of asking people about, is before you can ask, people need to feel secure and safe and sure that you will not blame, and that you will not, once they reveal the violence, that they will not fear that we will abandon them, or that we might get into a conflict with all the legal stuff we need to also be aware around, or something like that. So what I usually do is, like Lieven just did, so with accepting, we ask and we do, and once people say and reveal, yes, sometimes it get out of hand. I'm really explicit in saying to them, like I always have this line. I'm saying this now for more than 10 years. I always say, "Oh my God! Sometimes so we get violence between the two of you. Whoa, that's really rough. But you know what? I need to say something to you guys, because what I've learned, seeing so many couples suffering from violence, is that nobody, but really nobody, wakes up and thinks, today I'm going to beat my wife or my man, or I'm going to throw things or say ugly things. What I've learned is that when people wake up, what they feel is, my God, I hope that today will be a good day. I hope we will not fight. Yeah. So, but that's how we wake up when we love each other. And then all of a sudden, there's something that just really, and all the things just starts all over again. And before you know, you're even fighting together, or one of you is fighting and the other is trying to escape it. That's really awful. And what I know is, at the end of the day, when we go to sleep, everybody feels really bad about what happened. Whether the both of you hit each other, or one of you hit and the other just was really wounded, or we all feel bad, but we don't know how to talk about it. And so, you know what? If I really believe that's the case also with you guys. So please feel welcome to talk about it, because together we can find a way out.
So there's this feeling that as we start to move towards it, as a possibility, that this fear comes up and says, well, wait, what about if it's actually terrorism and it's not IPV, interpersonal partner violence? What if it is unilateral, not bilateral? Like 40% of the time it might be unilateral, and that one partner really was like a victim of childhood violence, and now they're in this position again, like, right, how do we protect them in between session? What's going to happen, right? So that's kind of the anxiety that starts to happen inside of us, I think.
Yeah, so many answers.
Yeah.
If
First, you will do the
Come up.
so until what time do we go, Rebecca?
Yeah, we're winding down. We just have a couple of minutes.
So then the first part is a wow, the therapist who feels that he or she gets scared is a good therapist. Because
Yeah.
when you feel your own fear, you know now your heart is racing, your brain is looking for a solution, you are looking for control. So now you're in danger to see a victim and a perpetrator. You're in danger to intervene because of your fear. So being kind to your fear is good, and saying, "Oh, guys, this is impressive. I have to wait a little moment. Can I take a breath? I'm so impressed by what you tell me. It's so heavy, so scary in a way. Are you scared too?" you go and you calm yourself down by talking about your own emotions, but making them open in the relationship, and that will probably open the room to speak of fear in that relationship. And then again,
Oh, that's too bad.
sound, Jeff.
Yeah, okay, to have sound? All right.
I can hear you. And Rebecca, you're there too? Okay. So we were talking about the emotional process of the self of the therapist, resonating with the fear and being attentive that my fear could then start and make me lose the basic of this choice, which is welcoming. Yeah? And so you hear the danger that we could lose the welcoming. And if we lose the welcoming, then we lost the therapy. Yeah? But on the other side, it started from, and because bidirectional, to make it clear again, situational couple violence or interpersonal couple violence is in two ways bidirectional. It's always bidirectional 100% because it's in a cycle. But in that bidirectionality, 60% of the couples both used physical violence, and 40% one partner used physical violence, the other not, but it's still bidirectional because it's in a situation of escalation. Yeah? The intimate terrorism is in another way unidirectional. The goal is to control the other, to make you my servant, you're at my service, but you're not really a person. I'm not really interested in you. In a narcissistic way, you're only there to make me shine. Yeah. So it's you're not important, you don't even exist in my mind. So that's different. That's why we call the assessment ongoing. And it's very nice that you said that sometimes on the ongoing process you can start to wonder, what is the power element here? Yeah? Because in EFT, of course, we understand that if there is power, we understand power is used to reach a deeper goal, which is the attachment bonding or the controlled attachment fear. So the power is secondary to the attachment. But when you start to wonder, is the power primary? Yeah? Then you come to another place. I've seen one couple like that. Chef has seen 1,000 couples, and he says he's seen 3 couples where in the end he thought, I think it's intimate terrorism.
Yeah.
But it depends. The more unexperienced the therapist is, the more intimate terrorist you see. Okay.
So
Yeah.
brilliant, Lieven. And I would like to maybe to end also because that was familiar answer to the last question, is, you know what? It's violence. It's something where it just our eyes go to the violence, and we forget to see what's underneath the violence. What Lieven just said, and it took me a while, couples, before I was able to go to stage 2, because there's a lot of de-escalation work, and I needed to work hard on my EFT skills. Yeah, but once I was able to do also with them stage 2 work, we were thinking about, we will see a lot of attachment injuries around the violence. Yeah, the violent incidents, the really deep wounds, and most of the time, almost, I think 95% of all the couples where I went through stage 2, they don't talk anymore about violence. Their pain is not about the violence. Their pain is about, there were moments where I was really afraid losing you. Yeah, that's really the heart of it, and it's important because you mentioned in your question, which from somebody from who is out there, who said, yeah, but what if she's also a trauma survivor of violence at her home when she was a child? What I've learned from working with violent couples is, of course, they're traumatized, they're trauma couples, very, very traumatized, but they found something with the other one that really felt for them as, I can heal here. In this relationship, I can heal. There was a lot of violence at home. Then I was able to grow up, which is amazing, in fact. And then I met you, and you were the first one who was really safe. You were there for me. Yeah. And that's so important to see that people get stuck in a paradoxical process where, although they hurt each other, they are often the most important and safest person for the other one where to go to once they're in pain. And so we need to see both sides of that to be able to help them. And from that, keep in mind that most couples just want to regain safety so they can heal from all the wounds together. And our job is to de-escalate the violent patterns, which we all know how to do in EFT, once we know how to understand violence through the scope of attachment.
So, ja, hoor er niet, hè? I don't hear you.
Oh.
But you hear us. Okay.
Well.
So I think from your lips, I think you say some closing words. Is that possible? Yeah. And the takeaway message is what Jeff's message is. If we hope that if you dare to look at the love between the people and you can understand, there is a map to understand violence from out of attachment, then you have to train to do EFT, but just in square, double, triple acceptance, double and triple reflection, double and triple validation, double and triple cycle work, double and triple validation, then work on the self of the therapist, double and triple. But it's the same process. It's the same process. We are well equipped. That's the wonder in the article in family process. That's the heart of the article. If we can understand violence through an attachment lens, then it seems logical that EFT is the logical way to try to work with it. That's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're back. You're back.
We heard your voice again. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I could have done that in sign language anyway. So it's very touching, very moving. I think, I certainly can learn more about it. I'm very excited to learn more about it. And to sponsor you in a 2-day masterclass that anyone who is working with this is willing to do. We're all attached again. Thank you, Annette. We're all back together. So I'm looking forward to that in the fall, to be online, so it's very accessible to people to join in. And I just thank everyone for coming and your interest in helping couples who are really suffering and wanting to stay together, right? Their bond is strong. It's just more isolating at times, right? They're where they really miss each other. Thanks, Diane. I'm glad to see you registered for the training. Hope to see many of you there. Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Bonsoir, good evening, buonasera a tutti.
Good evening. Goodbye.
Yeah.